Hey y'all, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, the special education boss. If you've ever felt confused, overwhelmed, or just plain frustrated at the 504 IEP table, you are in the right place. Every week, I'm breaking down the rules, the rights, and the realities of special education so you can walk into meetings informed, empowered, and ready to make real change. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, an advocate, a school-based member, or somebody who's just trying to do right by a student, this podcast gives you straight talk, real answers, and tools that you can use immediately. I'm not here to play politics. I'm not here to play sides. I'm here to train people who sit at the table and teach you how to follow the law, ask the right questions, and protect the rights of students. So go ahead and hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change. We're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.
Hey, you guys, welcome. If we haven't met, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, special education boss, helping individuals who sit at the IEP table, 504, navigate and negotiate the process and work for successful student outcomes. So thank you guys for being here to be an amazing, awesome August. I know probably 50% of you guys are teachers. Have you got your little like wavy border thing up? Do all the teachers have their wavy border up? Like, do you have wavy borders at home? I don't know. Preparing for a perfect 504 IEP year. All right, so we're going to talk about how to prepare for an IEP year. I don't look at other people's stuff. Not that I don't think there's other people that are amazing in this space, but there was a webinar from a law firm, and I watched it. It was 4 minutes. It was just a little video. It was 4 minutes long. You don't want to overdo it. So we need to prepare for the year. And so the first thing that I always ask my clients, and this is question number 1, is really think about this. Think about, I always take people back to when I originally started working with them. What is your reason, AKA, what is your why? What is your reason for A, your child having a 504, or B, having an IEP? What is the reason, right? And so legally, we know the reason for a 504 is because a child has a disability and they need certain accommodations, maybe some medical support and a very vanilla light behavioral plan. And maybe they also need to be identified with that behavioral plan should there be some sort of, I don't know, issue that arises that would include the police, right? So we have to remember that if a kid is 10 years old or older and there's a behavioral need, even if that arises out of your disability, that the independent school district's police can be involved. So if you have behavioral needs in a 504 or an IEP, you want to make sure that that's captured. There should be a section that talks about the student is responsible for the student code of conduct, which I always find ridiculous. And so I always, if a kiddo has great need, I give more language there and then more language in the deliberations, which is just something we have in Texas. Okay, I'm just going to stop. That's the last time I said it. Okay. Anyway, so what is your reason? Why did you start this whole process? Why did your kiddo start special ed 4 years ago? Why did you find so hard to get a 504? And is it doing the thing that you wanted it to do? Sometimes 504s are not effective at all. Sometimes an IEP is not effective at all. Sometimes it's better to scrap your IEP, decline services for special education, and just get Miss Cindy to be your tutor via Zoom. So if it is not working, then you need to recalibrate your reason, right? Is this fight, fun, and is the reason the reason's going to be the same, right? For a 504 or an IEP. And what is that in the federal code that I just printed out, right? It's 3 things: gainful employment, independent living, and further education. If you're in those meetings and that's not what it's about, you're in the wrong meeting. It's got to be about those 3 things, right? So is reading important for gainful employment, independent living, further education? Yes, it is, unless you throw a really good basketball, right? Those are the reasons that we're in that meeting. We're in those meetings to build a bridge so that my student can access the general ed curriculum, which is sort of a unique, so that they can have an educational benefit. I don't want you guys to forget that. It is an educational benefit. It's not an academic benefit. It's not a social benefit. It's not a language benefit. whatever the need is, the language in the law is an educational benefit. Okay. Next, what are your expected outcomes? Right. And this is a kind of a hard question. When you're a young mom, like a lot of you are, and then those those of us that are old, that are I'm marinated. I don't know that I'm old, or more like brined. What I wanted for James when he was 6, when he was 5, was different than what I wanted for him when he was 16. When he was 5, I wanted him to be potty trained. That was like my educational benefit, right? And to stop eating the sheetrock. So it shifted after that, right? And yours should shift that thing that you wanted at the beginning. So if you were one of my clients, I send you a 20-page intake form. And obviously what you want for a 3-year-old or 7-year-old is going to be different than what you want for a 10-year-old. So I want you to go back. I have to have that form to start any client, right? So Aubrey can tell me a great story. Brooke can tell me a great story, but I only have 500 children. I didn't have 500 baby showers, but I should have. So I need that, right? Because those are marking points. This is where Brooke said there is a pain point. This is where there is a pain point, so that I'm sure that I'm going back and addressing all those. Because sometimes we get so attached to a specific outcome that we forget about these other outcomes, right? Because all of those things are important, right? What are the academic needs? What are the social needs? What are the language needs? What are the medical needs? Because they're not exclusive of each other. They are completely connected. So what are your expected outcomes? And so this is sort of a loaded question, as all of my questions are. Are you on the same page with your spouse? Are you on the same page if you live with your mother and you're both raising your child? If you're single, everybody has a different expected outcome. Some of us just want it to stop. There are big points in my educational career with my son that I just wanted to get off the merry-go-round. I had a husband, my original husband, well, the first husband. I don't know if I think he's the first husband. And he went to one IEP meeting, the first one, and he said it was not enjoyable for him. And thank you. He said it made him uncomfortable. Okay. It's called parenting. It should make you uncomfortable, right? So if you have a partner, a spouse, if you're guardians, if you're the aunt and uncle, are you two on the same page? Really important. We talk about expected outcomes. I often get into meetings where, and this is unusual, but almost always, if it's a wife and a husband, that mostly I'm going to work with the wife, not always. If it's a dad and a dad, a mom and a mom, those might be more equitable. But usually when it's a wife and a husband, I usually work with the wife more, right? So sometimes I'll have a dad come into the meeting and you can very much tell that they have different expected outcomes, which makes it very hard to advocate for somebody when mom is nodding and dad's going, it's not a big deal. Oh, no. I said it was a big deal, right? So if there's somebody else also co-parenting with you, what are their expected outcomes? It's August. We need to get out a piece of paper and write it down, right? Because that's information that you need to be on the same page with if you're going into an IEP meeting yourself. If you're the teacher, if you're the LSSP, if you're the behavioral coach, what are your expected outcomes? And I think it's a really good time of the year to gently, and I'm gentle German Irish, I'm a small, petite, laid back person. I think it's a fair question to ask. It's not the federal law and IDEA. Can you just tell me, Ms. Brooke, what are your expected outcomes for Sally this year? And just let her tell you. What are your expected outcomes for Billy this year, Miss Martha? I think it's just a fair question to ask. Because sometimes they're both great expected outcomes, but they're different. And then we get February, and I'm not so happy with Martha. Jane's so happy with me either, right? What I was her job. So we do a thing, we've talked about this before. In the beginning of the year, I call it a Zach pack. I wish you remember the kiddo Zach. It was anyway. So I want you guys to go out and get 4x6 pictures of my kiddos. And if they have 3 teachers, cafeteria lady, bus driver, PE coach, music, computer, whatever, and I would get a 4x6 picture of my cherub. And then I would write, which is and you can use it too, it's on the back page of our intake form. I would write, which is what I say to all people, a detailed narrative of what you're wanting, what the school is providing and what is not going well, right? So obviously we don't put all that in there, but I describe at this 4x6 picture, I'm going to make it on your teachers. I'm sure you can put some fancy font on it. All I know how to do is just make a big font, a big, big font. So, and I would say, hey, here's baby James. He's terrified of me. So if he's not acting right, tell him you're going to call his mother, right? If you don't want him to change his behavior, tell him you're going to call his father. Best way to get a hold of me is email. Best way to get a hold of my husband is his pager. Remember pagers, you guys? A couple of you do, right? Give them that information, right? I am happy to volunteer. I will never volunteer, but I will send you a check, right? That sort of thing. I certainly want to partner with you. You're the professional. Thank you so much for teaching. This is what he'll work for. This is what he'll not work for. He's allergic to work. He won't sit still. Just sort of give them a synopsis, just parent to parent, adult to adult, of kind of who your kiddo is, aside from paperwork and the documentation, because kids are never paperwork. As we saw in the due process, they're never paperwork once it. So then that way, when I hand this to Aubrey and she's Paige's fourth grade teacher, she knows who Paige is, right? I mean, it's super easy. That gives her an opportunity to connect with Paige right away, right? Instead of, ooh, this kiddo has a behavior intervention plan. And she has 5 targeted behaviors. So that is a bridge that you can build right away and share in there what your expected outcomes are. We have a tutor 5 times a week. She's in ballet at 4 a.m. The stuff that people have told me. She has swim for an hour. I'm like, isn't she 7? And then we go to Kulan for 3 hours, 5 days a week. Isn't she 7? Mm-hmm. Right. So tell them about your life. There's other kiddos. We got a new puppy. We're so excited. Hope you have a great year. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Right. And vice versa. If you're a school-based member, same thing. We're so excited to have Billy. Here's kind of, where we see his needs. This is where we're tracking. Let me know if we can do anything to partner with you and if you need anything. Just good manners, right? If I hear best practice, or I don't even know what the phrase is anymore. I don't even think it's a thing. Can somebody print out the best practices? Because it's like my hair color, right? So connect with whoever's going to take care of your child. Connect with the parents if you're taking care of their child. And I get it, school-based members, 99, not maybe not 99, a very high percentage of parents do not respond, right? And you can't make that happen, but certainly lead with that. If you're a person with a child, period, every year is, it has some trepidation for parents. So just make that, doesn't have to be the Gutenberg Bible. But hey, it's great to meet you. Here's my TikTok channel. Maybe you don't, right? Here I'm on Instagrams, and just connect with them so that you're ready for the year. And if you were in due process, if you were in the Supreme Court, you're running for president, just put all that aside. We're just adults trying to help kiddos. Assume that nobody knows anything. I didn't sound very good, but you know what I mean? Like, nobody knows about the problems in the past, right? And most people don't. So when it's happening to us or we're in a dispute resolution, you say, everybody knows what's going on. All we've got our own stuff going on. Brooke's got her own stuff. This has got her own stuff, right? So just, even if you have something legally going on the school, just, hey, we're in love, smile, put on your happy Zoom face, drop off a bag of vegetables to the teacher. These are very good vegetables, right? Lead with love, okay? But you have to articulate your expected outcomes. You don't always have to call a meeting. And I love a meeting, but I also love saying, hey, Ms. Perkins, can you and I just do a Zoom and we can kind of talk through these points together? Because sometimes that's better. I don't need the whole 504 committee to come together and the nerds, right? I don't need the whole 85 people in the IEP team to come together. Maybe I just want to talk to you. I'm going to talk to Ashley. She's the SPED team lead for the junior high. Right? So you don't have to do it all, and you don't have to be opposed to everybody. And I know some kids are hard. I know that some parents are hard. I know I was a hard parent because I was in trauma. Now I'm very soft and delightful. And I know that some People that work at school are hard to work with. That's the gig because they're humans, right? So I want you to like re-up, forgive, and move on and try to start with a really good year with expected outcomes that benefit behaviorally, emotionally, socially, language, social skills, academic, functional, and all the things. Okay. So you really need to sit down with your significant other or that are raising the chair up and talk about your expected outcomes. And then on a piece of paper, your 4x6 picture of your kiddo and get those to the teachers or the humanoids that are going to serve your kiddos for a year. God bless teachers. I don't know how teachers do it, right. I would have been a good teacher in the 70s, but it was a different time, right? We had different, behavior intervention plans then. Okay. All right. Next, how do we get there? And so that really is important. So, a couple months ago, we were doing reading, or I can't remember exactly what we were training on. I read it a plaque. And as I was reading it, it said something about specific reading program, right? And when we asked the educators here on the class, every educator had a different interpretation of what that was. So you might want to take this time to say, hey, Mrs. Smith, I heard that you're the most amazing teacher, even if you haven't heard that. It's a great way to lead off. Can you tell me how you think that we'll be able to be successful with his, specific learning disability and written expression? I want to know how you're going to do it so that, write this down, so that the tutor is doing the same thing and that we are doing the same thing. It's not to say, hey, Brooke, what are you going to do? Well, that's wrong. It's not that at all. The reason you have different teachers is because different teaching styles still teach the same human. We don't all have to do the same. So here's the phrase. Hey, can you tell me what you're doing to work on his deficit and written expression so that the tutor, grandma, myself, when we're working with them, we're all speaking the same language. See, so we're partnering. We're not that different. We're more alike than different. Can you tell me how you collect data? Can you just tell me how often you collect data? And I think it's important that we ask for a copy of the blank IEP data collection sheets. And if they don't have them, then Martha will make them one. Or you can even provide that teacher a copy of your child's IEP. And before you clutch your pearls or anything, maybe they don't have it. And that's just the truth. Maybe they don't have a copy of the 504. So since we're all going to lead with love and we're all going to collaborate, hey, did you want me to give you a copy of his 504? Did you want me to give you a copy of his IEPs? Yours math teacher, he has a math goal. So if I was a teacher, I'd be like, thank you. So it's sort of, if we're going to collaborate, then let's collaborate. I know for many teachers that they have access to one of the 38 pages or two. I mean, it's just goofiness, right? You have to ask somebody to unlock this. And I just want to confirm you had a copy of David's IEPs, or I want to confirm you had a copy of, Cindy's behavior intervention plan. And kind of, I know there's a lot of words in the dip. Kind of let me tell you what that means in layman's terms. Is that okay? So that's part of the heavy lifting, right? Way to partner with your teacher. Your teacher doesn't have a copy of his IEP. Your teacher doesn't have a copy of his 504. Provide them a copy if you have. That'll be a great way to start. Not been my experience that people are out to get you. I'm not saying that there aren't some people that are out to get you, but it's just not been my experience. Teachers are coming back. We are in the middle of forever changing world about plastics and PPE, UPS and OPI and FedEx and the teaching world has changed. I mean, years ago, now we can't even hug a kid. Now we can't. I mean, just, we've taken a lot of the fun out of teaching. And so teachers have a lot on their plates. Teachers have a lot of legal requirements across the board, exempt of special ed. So you want to honor that. And because we want to keep our teachers. We have lots of great teachers. We don't want them working at Best Buy. We don't want them selling houses. One of the most amazing diagnosticians at a massive high school a few years ago just quit. Did it. I know for sure she had a master's and she might have had a doctorate. She was amazing and she spoke Karen. And I said, I can't do it anymore. I was like, no. And you just wait for 20 years till I retire and get my lip injections. And she's somewhere selling houses. And there's nothing wrong with selling houses. But we have to do better as parents, right, to partner with the school, right? And so just because the first grade teacher and the first grade principal and the first grade bus driver were banana heads, don't make the second grade teacher pay for it. Does that make sense? Of course it does. And so that's how you figure out, how do we get there? We get there by working together. It's way easier to paddle a boat if you're both paddling together, right? And what do you need to accomplish this? And so I think this is really an important question to unpack. Anybody that knows me, I'm the first person to tell you to stop getting your kids tutors. Stop sending your kids to more academics after school. If you have a kiddo that needs tutoring after school and you're in a school district that has indoors and air conditioning and plumbing, you're skewing the data. You're messing it up. So I have kiddos that would have been identified years ago, but they went to school for 8 hours and then they went to school for 3 more hours. I had a family one time, I actually had them calculated and they were doing 30 extra hours a week. I sent them home with a sheet. And like the school was stuck, like, and he still couldn't read because he had such a profound specific learning disability in reading comprehension. So I call it watering concrete. I have never met a kid, and I'm sure some of y'all have them, that said, "Ooh, I'd rather, instead of playing or doing what I like to do and building stuff, I would like to just go do some more paperwork." Like adults don't like paperwork. We just like pay our mortgage, right? We don't go, "Ooh, we got paperwork." And what we're doing to a kiddo, and this is just my opinion, which is always mine. It's just my experience over the years is that you make kiddos, because I have kiddos for years and they tell me it makes them feel bad. It makes them feel like they're not okay. It makes them feel like you think they're broken. Right. And so just like my mama said, why don't you let him go outside and the sink blow off him? She said that during Watergate. So there is something really good about going outside and letting the stink blow off of you. Right. So I want you to calibrate. Same thing we calibrate in special ed, right? Meaningful benefit, harmful effect. When I'm trying to accomplish something, what's the meaningful benefit and harmful effects? Because these, whatever it is, it takes time away from something else. It takes time away from pushing your sister off of her bed, right? It takes time from making your mother crazy, right? It takes time from going fishing with dad. So I want you to look at this. Is what I'm doing, and my parents are amazing. Y'all are the fixers, resolvers, and sometimes we overfix, right? Sometimes it's okay to be a junkie reader. This is, because I've never been anybody that's great at everything or junky at everything. So just, I want you to sit back, and every year I call it an Etch-a-Sketch. August is the Etch-a-Sketch. I don't know if you guys are old. You'll have to Google that, you young kids. It's a thing they had in the 20s. And then we just clean it, right? We start over, right? Is what I'm doing working? Could I do it better? And if your kid's old enough, ask them. Ask them if they like you making them sit there doing math facts. Because they'll tell you. And we got to listen to if what we're doing to accomplish this, is this what I want? Is this what my partner wants? Is this what my spouse wants? The other guardian? Is this what my student wants? Because last time I checked, I've never read anybody that's not competitive. And if you say you're not competitive, where's wash your mouth out with a bar of zest? Right? So that was also part of my childhood. So we're all competitive, right? As moms, we're like, what did your baby sit up before he was born? Because we all did that. I'm a grandchild. What did your kid work? Well, my kid came out coding. So what's your kid? We're just competitive, right? And in education or special education, we're always doing this, right? It's an output, right? So I think if your kiddo is old enough that it's a conversation, maybe you just have it over, some Ben and Jerry's ice cream or whatever. Just, hey, what do you think about these math? I had a kid last year and I was on the Zoom with his mom, and I love kids because they're more behaved like me. And I'm like, what's the best thing about school? Nothing. What's your favorite part of school? Nothing. In this elementary school, I said, do you like recess or lunch? No. And nobody ever asked him that. Like, I can't really imagine that. And I think that we have to look at, the cognitive load that we expect out of kids, their mental health. I don't, if I hadn't had a child in special ed, all of my kiddos would be jacked up. I'm sure they're all going to be on one day. That's my mother, right? But we want more for our kids. We want them to be age appropriate, and we want them to go to 4-year college. And what I say to clients is, why? Why do you want them? And so I think it's important when you're doing all these things to accomplish a thing, and I'm in a reading program thing, and I'm in a spelling bee training, and whatever, right? We all do it, parenting. Is that what we want as a family, right? Is that what's the things that we're accomplishing? Is that what the student wants? And really sit down and look at it on a piece of paper. How much time are you doing, right? And I think sometimes for kiddos, they work so hard in school and then they're done. They're just done. I was the kid that could call to school, I know that's surprising, and then do well on the test and never had to study, which became a problem in college, right? Because they study. Those are the things. So what is your reason? What's your why? Why are we here? And you know what? It's okay to go off the Titanic. If you decided 504 is not worth it, the one math goal and math computation, this is not worth it. You can always, special education or 504 is consensual. You can revoke consent for either of those services at any time, right? Depending on the acuity of your child's disability, that might be a different conversation, but it really is up to you. Is it moving the balls on the field? What are your expected outcomes and why? Do you think your child with an SLD is going to catch up this year? That's a different conversation we should have, right? How do we get there? Is what I think needs to happen to get there really close to what Ms. Smith says, or right? And what do you need to accomplish this? And just really reset and listen to your kiddos, right? For me, because I'm not in the forest, it's sometimes a lot easier for me to see very quickly what's going on with the kiddo, right? I always figure out what's right or wrong with my kiddos, but I can meet a family and have never met their kiddo and tell them exactly who their kiddo is from their testing, right? And sometimes we get so committed to, and I'm just going to say this respectfully, fighting for justice, fighting for what's right, defending our reading program, defending our past program, defending we're the best, right? That we're so busy defending, we can listen, right? I want you to really sit down and rethink about, this is the Etch-a-Sketch time, which is in the federal law. Is all of this going to be worth it for post-secondary? And you'll know the answer to that, because inside of you is a little knower, right? Listen to your husband, listen to your wife, listen to your partner, listen to your spouse, listen to somebody else, because they usually have information and wisdom. And we'll deep dive more into what I'm wanting you to relook at in the skeleton of your IEP document. We'll go into it more there, but kind of around these 4 questions, I'm going to open it up for you guys to ask questions. If you meet separately with a teacher and come up with different points or goal outcomes, how is that integrated into the IEP for accountability or approval for others? That's a great question. So if you meet separately with a teacher and come up with different points or goal outcomes, how is that integrated? So here's the good news. I always say the only 2 people that should be in an IEP meeting are the owner and the teacher. I don't know why we have all these other people at the meeting. So I think that if your teacher has something else that they would like to add to it, that would be great. You could call a revision or a review IEP meeting at any time and look at consideration for adding a goal, knowing that a goal might then require different services and supports. So if Aubrey and I agree on something, Brooke and I agree on something, if all 75 of us agree on something, if it's not in the paperwork, we didn't agree on it, right? Okay. And as we can all see, not so much ends up in the paperwork anyway. So I want it in the paperwork, and I think you guys saw my deliberation. The reason I have deliberations is because I'm not going to remember either. So if they agree to a service or support, that would have been a service or support for your student and something different than other students have. You would need that to be in the IEP. Then if it didn't happen, then we have different responses to that. Also, there are times that I would agree with the committee to say, hey, listen, you've got Charlotte there. I know this is new. We would be amenable to trialing this for a period. Because if I say, hey, Charlotte has to have 15 minutes of whatever and 35 minutes, and she has to have that, right? And so let's say that that's too much for Charlotte, or we get in there and Charlotte's like, I'll take 7 hours. Then I would have to come back to the meeting. So those are the two kinds of languages that I capture. We are amenable to trialing this, gives you guys some flexibility, right? Especially if you're coming out of a self-contained class, lots of things, right? And then we'll come back in 6 weeks. I would never come back before 6 weeks on anything that we're doing new. But yeah, if you don't, they're not, I hate this phrase, they're not on the hook for it, but they're not, right? If somebody just gave me a car, but I didn't take out a loan, they forgot, right? So especially support when you're asking for another human to implement something, that has to be in the paperwork.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
And you can do it even by what we call it a paper amendment. Hey, Brooke's wanting her little boy to have whatever. You certainly don't need to come to a meeting. We would be amenable to, if the school-based members agree, to do that by paper amendment. We can do anything in the IEP document by paper amendment, meaning I don't have to have an actual meeting, except for two things: eligibility and minutes. Eligibility and minutes. So lots of things are affected by minutes, whether it's placement, right? So anything other than those two things, we can agree as collaborative adults who are not on TikTok to, yeah, we agree that he should have 85 goals instead of 92. Yeah. We can agree to, he doesn't need to chew on his jewelry 7 periods a day. We agree you can take, right? So anything, the law says eligibility, you have to completely convene in person or in human. Yes, human in person, same thing. Or minutes. Okay. It's really important that you guys know that. So just send out if I had an email for every time that says you don't need to bring Karen, would you send you? Can I get a shirt that says that? You don't need to bring Karen. We'll just send you the paperwork. I would love for you to send me the paperwork, but we have to make sure that we're all nodding, thumbs upping, unmuting, right? That sort of thing. So when people say, I can't do this, you intimidate me. When I hear like, oh, teachers stop talking at a meeting because they're scared of advocates, I always say, I have no idea what that means. I mean, I really have no idea what that means. I don't stop talking in front of a brain surgeon. I don't even know what that means. If you didn't know you were going to be in meetings with other humans, you shouldn't teach. Like, really, we're all going to have fun with our top on and our tender spot earrings and our chevron shirts. And then what does that mean? Your job is to lead and mold the lives of children. Yeah. Suck it up, buttercup. Yeah. And I would say, you know what? A lot of time followers feel intimidated by leaders. And then I would go, that always like closes it out. Often I find that followers are intimidated by leaders. I mean, I've met lots of great leaders. I'm like, because they have skills that I don't have. And I would say it's certainly not my intention to, but I have a responsibility in my position to give you the information in a way that I know is truthful, legal, and it affects kiddos' outcomes. But I would never apologize for being amazing. I always say, I don't even know what that means. As I say at meetings, that's not a thing. I had a principal one time, he said, you made my teacher cry. I was like, no, her eyes are watering. She wasn't lying. She probably wouldn't be crying. I mean, she was just lying. I mean, when I've cried before when I'm lying, but I didn't make you anything. Yeah. But I would use that phrase, Martha. Often I find that followers are intimidated by leaders. And it happens.
Hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change, we're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.